I recently took a short break from social media, the first proper break I've done since 2017. Yes, I'm a bit of an addict. Upon my return, I saw what could be described as a growing sentiment in the vegan community, and one that I find quite concerning. The first thing I saw was a screenshot that my friend sent to me. It was a popular vegan festival in Ireland explaining why they won't be holding an event this year. Turns out they aren't doing the event because they feel it would be inappropriate to have people enjoying the privilege of tasty vegan food while there's an ongoing humanitarian crisis in the Middle East. Then just today, I saw another vegan saying they're not going to share any vegan posts anymore about vegan food or anything for the same reason. These are two examples of what you could call a now is not the time to talk about this sentiment. And I've got a bad feeling this sentiment is on the rise. I do hope I'm wrong though, so tell me, have you seen anybody else saying this kind of thing, or is it just me? Now, being in the vegan movement since 2017 and barely taking a break over all these years, as I just told you, I can confirm this isn't the first time I've seen people heading down the now is not the time to talk about this path. I saw it when the Me Too movement was at its peak in the summer of 2020 with George Floyd and BLM, during COVID, when the Ukraine-Russia war began, and there's probably a few others that I'm missing as well. So is it ever a good idea to stop advocating for animals or posting certain things in response to a humanitarian issue? Well, probably yeah, but it depends on the context. For example, it's probably not a good idea to jump onto a page that's dedicated to a current hot button humanitarian issue and try to insert veganism into that conversation. Not because we shouldn't speak up for animals with people like this, but because it's very likely to backfire. Now, you could argue that this approach of inserting veganism into hot button human rights issues could work for some people. And you'd be right, it does work for some people. But at what cost? To me, it's more likely that doing this is going to lead to people being pushed away from veganism more than they're going to be brought closer to it. See, I don't think the cost is worth it just to have a few people more interested in veganism in exchange for a lot of people going against us. But should we try to outreach human rights advocates who are passionate about justice? I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because they're passionate about justice. The thing is, though, in most cases, bringing up veganism to an activist passionately speaking on an emotional humanitarian crisis would be like bringing up veganism to a firefighter while he's fighting a wildfire. You're probably not going to get anywhere good with it. Now, I don't think activism should only be based on what's morally right. We should also consider what's likely to work and, more importantly, what's likely to do the opposite. So sure, there are some circumstances where now isn't the time to talk about this, probably makes sense. But does it make sense to cancel a vegan event in a Western country due to a humanitarian disaster on the other side of the world? Does it make sense for a vegan in America to stop posting about vegan food for the same reason? Now, I understand the emotion involved in a decision like this, don't get me wrong. The guilt of enjoying tasty vegan food and the privilege of being able to focus on animal rights due to having a good life with the stable food, financial, and living situation. So I get it. Sometimes you can feel bad about those things, especially when other people are suffering so much. But just look at it practically for a minute. Canceling that event or not making a post, doesn't help anyone caught in a crisis. It only hurts the animal cause. These decisions don't give anything. They only take away things from animals. They take away support. They take away any possible impact when you stop, but they don't create any impact for anybody else. See, that vegan event could go ahead and do what it does best. It could show the world how tasty and nutritious vegan food can be. It can host some great speakers to teach people about ethics, cooking, and environmental points and, what's going on in the world in that sense and everything. There's so many things they could do. There's so many things they could bring to the world to teach people through their event. And here's the kicker. They could also host a fundraiser to provide vegan food to people in need. Now, that would actually help both animals and the people that they care about that are currently going through this crisis. Same thing for the vegan who doesn't want to post anymore. They could do a fundraiser too and actually take action that benefits both the animals and the people they care about. Now, if we only look at this through the lens of the emotion and the guilt of the situation, the feeling bad as we already went through, feeling bad about being at a cool vegan event, feeling bad about having the privilege to focus on animal rights and veganism, I understand if it's the emotion that's driving the decision to not do those things, right? It's understandable to be overwhelmed and emotional when you see all the horrors of the world and you don't feel like it's right to post. You don't feel like for you it's the right thing to do. I get that. But I don't think it makes sense to treat this as anything other than a personal preference, something you feel for yourself. I don't see any way to make it into something moral, like a moral claim, like we shouldn't be talking about this right now, because that doesn't make sense. Because if you actually went ahead with your work, if you held the event or if you made the posts, you could actually help, as we've acknowledged, the animals and those people in need. So although I empathize and understand the sentiment of trying to be respectful or conscious of the current landscape, and of course, if a human rights issue directly impacts you or could impact you, then yeah, it's in our best interest to act on it. We can't do activism for animals if we have no rights. But unfortunately, at least it seems to me, that some vegans and some advocates are a little bit too eager to put animals in the back seat when human issues are present. And I do get it though, because for most people, it's easier to empathize with other humans. This is just a fact of reality. People tend to feel much more strongly about issues that affect other people. It's just how it is. And I'm far from an expert on all the human rights issues going on in the world, but I did do a little research, and here are 5 massive humanitarian issues from the last 5 years. What's going on in Sudan right now is insane. There's a massive civil war and a famine. It's the largest displacement crisis in the world, with over 12 million people displaced and about 5 million facing emergency food insecurity, with hundreds of thousands of children dead, and the death rates are reaching up to 3.6 per 10,000 children under 5 daily. What's going on in Yemen with ongoing civil war and chronic famine? UNICEF described this in 2020 as the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, with up to 19 million people food insecure and an estimated 130,000 children dead. In 2023, 21.6 million people still required humanitarian assistance. In Tigray, in Ethiopia, there is a famine that's currently going on since 2020. 150,000 to 200,000 deaths by early 2022, with estimates of up to 900 a day in the worst period. At the peak of it, 13 million people faced acute food insecurity, which is just absolutely insane. Then there's the Horn of Africa and the mega drought that was going on from 2020 to 2023. Left over 46 million people affected, with 13.5 million internally displaced, 4.5 million refugees, 9 million women at elevated risk, and around 43,000 excess deaths in Somalia alone. And then there's the Haiti famine in 2024, just last year. 5.4 million people, nearly half the population, suffered from crisis or worse, insecurity with food insecurity conditions. Just look at those horrific humanitarian crises from the last 5 years. And trust me, if we keep going back, we're going to find even more. Now, I think it's important to acknowledge something here. When we look back and we see all these horrible things happening to humans, something becomes clear. It is never a good time to talk about animals. And I'll repeat that because I think it's important. There is never a good time to talk about animals. If we stop talking about animals every time there's a human crisis, we'll never talk about animals. But that's only if we look at this through a human lens. Now, over 2,000 land animals are killed for meat every second. If we had fish, that number increases drastically. And then we have all the other animals suffering every minute of every day in all the other industries that breed, mutilate, exploit, and kill them. When we look at this through an animal lens, it's always a good time to talk about animals. So prepare your activism well, work hard on your rhetoric, and ensure it is as effective as you can make it. And be careful around any hot button topics if you don't feel right engaging with them through a vegan or an animal rights lens. And if you're passionate about other causes, by all means, do whatever you can to help them. But please don't stop speaking for animals. We need vegan and animal rights events, and we need vegans speaking up, whether it be posting vegan food or talking about animals and the ethics, posting recipes, environmental facts, making art, whatever it is, all the ways you can have a positive impact for animals and the ways you can normalize making changes for them. Please don't stop doing that. Most animals can't stand up and they can't fight for themselves. And compared to human issues, they have very, very little support, both in terms of activism and people and financial support. They are by far the least supported beings on our entire planet, okay? They need every single one of us who can and cares to step up and keep working for them.